He is an important part.
Oh, I left my water in the
Is Marco on, Jamie?
I'm gonna run and get my water.
I gotta wait again.
Everybody gets some.
Dave, you ready?
Yes.
Call the meeting to order. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Correll?
Here.
Commissioner Hewitt?
Here.
Chairman Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Romero?
Present.
Commissioner Sterling?
Here.
We have 5 commissioners here. Marco. Commissioner Say is absent, as well as Commissioner Kennedy.
This is a time any member of the public can address the Planning Commission on any matter that's not on the agenda tonight. Will not be taken any action, and you have 3 minutes. Go to the first item. Oh, no, sorry. We have to approve last,
Oh, yeah,
Minutes.
I'll approve the last February 19th minutes.
I'll second that.
Hit the button.
Yeah, go ahead, touch your screen.
Oops.
Okay, we have all ayes. Marco?
now on to general business.
Thank you. So before I get started, I just wanted to introduce Marco Ornelas Lopez. He's an associate with BBK. He is the voice in the sky this evening, since Scott Shapsas could not be with us this evening for a conflict. So the item before you this evening is a public hearing for a variance in a site plan to allow demolition of an existing single-family residence and construction of a new 2-story single-family residence in the multiple residential high-density zone at 304 Sumner Avenue. The property is bordered on 3 sides by other residential properties in the high-density zone, and then also a residential property zone special commercial to the north. As far as entitlement history, this property was granted a conditional use permit for short-term rental in April of 1997. And just as background, because that entitlement does run with the land, not the building, it will continue to be operate pursuant to the adopted conditions of that CUP. So even with the new residents, as long as they're able to comply with the conditions of approval, that CUP will remain valid, but just as background. So the applicant is proposing to demolish an 843 square foot building and construct a new 1,332 square foot building that would be 2 stories with a roof deck. Access to the trash enclosure and the required auto-wet parking space are provided off of the rear alley. Overall, most of the project complies with the development standards of what's known as the designated area of the high-density residential zone. So to understand what the designated area is we have development standards for the zoning district like we do for all zones, but understanding that the flats has a unique development pattern where some of the lots are very small, under 2,000 square feet. There is a designated area within the high-density zone that provides for its own specific setbacks and development standards that are intended to help people maximize the development potential of those smaller lots to make it more equitable with the larger lots in the same zone. The applicant's project does comply with the development standards for the designated area of the HD zone, except for the front and rear setback conditions. Pursuant to the setback requirements of the zone, there should be, the way it is written, it says that there should be no less than a 3-foot setback on one side and a minimum of a 12-inch setback on the opposite side in this area. So what that means is if your one side setback is 3 feet, the other side needs to at least be 1 foot. And that is understood that opposite sides also refers to front and rear setbacks. So if the front setback is 3 feet, the rear needs to be at least 1 foot or vice versa. This is a unique way of describing setbacks that is specific to this designated area of the HD zone. The applicant has requested a variance from the setback requirements due to previous experience designing and permitting projects in the same area of the HD zone where 0-foot setbacks have been permitted in front or rear in the past. Also based on a worksheet that had previously been utilized by planning staff as part of the review of similar projects. Therefore, it is their determination that the granting of a variance for this property should be granted based on the history of past approvals for 0-foot front or rear setbacks in this zone. It is the opinion of staff that the request would not meet the findings for granting a variance. We did confirm with the city attorney that our understanding of how to interpret the front, rear, and side setbacks for this zone is correct in terms of being consistent with the way the code is written. And though we have reviewed the past project history provided by the applicant and acknowledged that it is possible that some previous projects incorrectly interpreted the required setbacks for this zone, a previous incorrect interpretation does not necessarily provide grounds for a variance where development standards can be correctly applied for the current project. Variances are generally granted when there are special conditions on a property, either related to topography, encumbrances like easements, or other conditions that would prevent somebody from complying with the zoning setbacks and would thus deny them the same development potential and privileges of other properties in the same zone. This property is a square flat lot. It has equal access to Sumner Avenue and clear access to the alley, and thus has no particular scenario in which it would be impossible for the applicant to comply with the existing setbacks. Thus, we are, while the project otherwise complies with the development standards for the zone, staff is recommending that the variance request be denied. Just as a note, if the Planning Commission were to take staff's recommendation, the project would be considered statutorily exempt from CEQA per 15270, projects which are disapproved, because a project that's disapproved cannot have an impact on the environment. We also want to note that this project does not require a water allocation from Southern California Edison for the project that's proposed. The existing residence is a 2-bedroom home. They're proposing a 2-bedroom home. So there is no increase in the water demand for the construction of the residence. The applicant and their representatives are here this evening and would like to provide you a presentation, and I am also here for any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah.
I think I have to.
Okay, when I'm looking at table 1 on page 4, and it's a front setback. Went out to the side and found out that where it says existing 2 feet 2 inch, that would imply that it's 2 feet back as a setback, but it's actually negative 2 feet 2 inch. And so it actually goes into the city right away. So when they tear down that house, they're actually going to be pulling it out of the city right away and pushing it back. And the reason I was concerned about that is as I was trying to see how it lines up with all the existing buildings. So right now, unfortunately, or maybe if this is correct, all those other buildings are at the same point. And what confused me is I think what they're proposing then is set back further from the existing buildings. Even though when you look at this, it looks, it says the existing setback is 2 feet 2 inches, but what they're proposing is 1 foot, but it's actually further back.
Like 1 foot of what it should be?
1 foot back, it's actually,
So it'd be 3 feet back from
it's
this.
3 feet back.
Yeah, so I'm saying, so 1 feet back from what it should actually be then, right?
From what it should actually be, and this is 2 feet in,
Okay.
above, forward
Yeah,
from what it
so
should
the new building then, if I get this right, will be 3 feet back from the existing building is where it is now?
So the plans that were provided, and the applicant can clarify
this
as
is-
part of their presentation, but the plans that were provided for staff review kind of have an inconsistency in that sense, that the site data table provided on page
Yeah,
one.
and like this is incorrect. Yeah, for what
Right,
they
so
did.
if there is an inconsistency between the site plan and how it's drawn and the site data table, that's, I think, something for the applicant to clarify. Regardless of that, and we would have to confirm with Public Works whether an encroachment into the right-of-way actually exists or not, because I can't speak to that at the meeting. But what I would say is even if encroachment did exist, it doesn't really change the analysis that's provided by me in the staff report, because setbacks are based off of property lines, not existing building footprint.
Thank you. And, yeah, that kind of threw me off.
Yes.
I'm still coming to grips with it.
Agree. I had some notes
Okay.
on that too.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to, I took down a few notes. The report mentions a CUP for the transient rental. The resolution names the applicants Ashley and Courtney, but have the owner insert trust name. So I'd like to know who the owners were previous and how many property transfers have happened since the TRL transfer. Does that make sense?
Sure. So we'll have to confirm that. The current trust name is the same individuals.
As the applicant?
I just did, as the applicant tonight.
Okay.
I just did not have the full trust name prior to the publishing of the staff report, so I did not want to make a guess. When it is the trust is still for the applicants, which is Ashley and Courtney.
Okay, and then for the other part of my question, for how many property transfers have happened since the original TRL license was issued? Do you have that?
So I don't have that on hand, but regardless of the decision you make tonight on this project, that does not impact any of the conditions of approval or the rights that person has under the existing CUP. So if for instance, it were discovered that more transfers have occurred than would allow them to maintain the CUP, then that would be enforced. But that's kind of a separate issue item than what's being discussed tonight. So whatever you just decide on this particular application, one way or the other, the CUP, it does not impact the CUP regulations.
It's a separate, whole different
It's
argument.
a separate entitlement.
Okay.
But we did want to disclose that it existed as part of the staff report because generally, unless they don't comply with the conditions of approval for the CUP, which I did not analyze as part of this report, the fact that the building is being replaced in and of itself does not mean that that CUP would be revoked. Because CUPs run with the land, not with the building.
And they're not asking for any more than what they already have, right?
So they've not asked for anything in this application that would specifically modify any conditions of the existing CUP.
Yeah, so they can do that another time if they like, but they're not asking for any.
Not tonight, no.
Yeah.
I had some other notes, but some things were answered. So.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone like to speak?
Hi, I'm Tori Jones. I'm the designer for the project. My address 2711 Oak Knoll Drive, Los Alamitos, California. Eric, you are correct as far as the setback. Right now, the building face is 2'2" over the property line. Based on Brian and myself doing as accurate measurements, we found a survey pin in the alley, measured 10 feet, which is the alley, and then measured the property, which is 47.75 feet to the front property line, and we are 2'2" over that. That said, all of the building, well, the majority of the homes on Sumner on that side are in line with what we are now. So our recommendation was correct in going, we will be 1 foot to the inside of the property line, which would take us 3 feet from where the existing building is now. I realize that it has nothing really to do with the variance that we're asking for. I've been working on the island for over 15 years with Fine Line. We have gone through, I gave all this information to Kelly as far as all the projects that we have done with a 0 front, 0 rear. Normally, we're not at 0, but we're not at 1 and 3. Her interpretation of the zoning code is the first time we've heard it read that way or interpreted that way. The last time we had to do a variance was 2021 at 318 Eucalyptus for the rear setback. And the planner at that point, I believe, said we needed to be 3 feet and 3 feet. So the inconsistency, we've been doing it for 15 years with a 0-0. The standards worksheet shows it as 0-0 if you have an alley in the rear. And so our ask is that we maintain what everybody else has had throughout the flats for the variance. And let's put it, is that, any question? And, as far as the trust goes, it went from their parents and uncle, so parents and sibling, to the daughters. And that's been, how long have they had, They had it since 1995.
Thank you.
Not a sale, just a pass down or whatever.
Yeah, inheritance. There
the same
was
family.
yeah, the sale was and then they just purchased the uncle's portion of it, so that would be referenced in the new trust.
So the CUP was issued to them in 97, right? Yes. So there's been no change.
Yeah, so it's the same,
No change at all.
Yeah, it's the same family.
just names on the trust have changed.
Yeah, I'll go and research that.
Outside, I think.
All right. Brian Tucker, Fine Line Construction, 706 Pebbly Beach Road. Guess we're it tonight, huh? That mean I can talk for like an hour and a half if I need to? No? Okay. All right, I'll keep it.
3 minutes.
So, I can appreciate I've read that code several times back and forth, and it's ambiguous at best. And I think whenever you have something and you have to send it to an attorney for interpretation, I mean, by definition, it's vague. So I think it's a little vague, and we can argue back and forth on it. But I think this particular property is a little unusual from the respect that the property line condition we went out and looked at. Because we've got all these houses along Sumner that are fairly in a line. There's a little back and forth, but mostly they're all in a line. I've measured a lot of stuff. I've been doing this for 40-something years, and I'm fairly certain that all those houses along that side are 2 foot 2 inches into the city right away. So, and that's not unusual, because what happens is Avalon was laid out a long time ago. And these guys, when they laid this out, they did the best they could with the information and the technology they had at the time. So when you have that type of technology and it's not as accurate and things progress, it becomes more and more accurate, certainly things are identified. So I don't fault anybody for it being that way. It's just kind of the way it is. But this particular property, because of that, ironically, if you would grant us the variance to have a 1 foot front setback, is actually going to be 3 feet behind all the other houses on the street. So in theory, if that house stays the way it is, it's going to be into the right-of-way, and you're going to have less space the way it is than if we build a new one, you're actually going to have more space. Does that make sense?
Moving it back.
Exactly right. That house is going to be approximately 3 feet back from where it is right now. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Like I said, it's just kind of unique because of that. So notwithstanding the language in the code or anything else, it's just because those are over, this is going to be back. I think it's, and obviously I can give you the contractor spiel that it's going to be a nice shiny new house as compared to an old one. So, but you guys all know that. Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Courtney Coleman, one of the owners of the property. My address 27011 Roswell Court. Anything else you need from me to begin? Is that okay? Okay. Sorry, I've never done this before. I feel like I'm trying not to be nervous.
It's okay. It's
okay. Sorry. Anyhow, just want to provide just a very short little backstory of our family. So our folks, our mom, my sister and I, our mom grew up coming to the island her whole life. She always told us stories of like catching coins from the big ferry over, and that was their whole family. They grew up coming here since our mom was 2 years old. And then they brought that into our life, like our family tradition, our entire life. Multiple times a year, we rented the Freeman House on Catalina Avenue for years and years. That's like our entire history on the island was there. And then we had kids and continued to do the same. Anyhow, when my grandfather passed away, and my grandma, who brought our family over for years, decided to invest in a little place, and she bought the place 304 Sumner. It was a fixer-upper, and now it is back in that state, but they poured their whole soul and love into that, and we've sort of made it what it is. It's been our home since we were born, essentially, or since 97, so since as long as we can remember, and our kids have gone there. It's a small little place, but it's real special to us. This whole island's very special to us, so.
Okay, you got it.
We lost our mom unexpectedly in 2020, and our aunt just last year, and the whole family, or our uncle who was part of this, wanted to just sell it, and it was just, we couldn't do it. Our kids didn't want to sell it, and we just loved this place so much. I'm so sorry. But we're doing this for them, and we're standing up here, and this is uncomfortable and awkward, and I did not expect to have to do this, and I apologize. But with that being said, I hope you understand how much we love and value and respect this island and everything that it is about, everything. We bring our friends here. We've introduced so many people to this place, and we have total pride in every part of this space, and we always will, which is why we're intending to invest probably more money than we should, but it's so special to us, and we feel like our mom and our aunt want us to be here. So I know this is such a silly little variance and it doesn't seem super important, but it's a very small space to begin with. And they have one child and we have two. We just want enough space for us to come here. And of course we're going to rent it out, but not to like 1 million people, obviously. So we're just trying to make it better for the future generations and to beautify the island a little bit more. And I just hope you know that this is coming from a place of like sincerity, honestly. So I just don't want you guys to think we're trying to build a monstrosity, and because we respect the island the same way that all of you guys do. I hope you know that. So that's all I can say at the moment, but thank you for your consideration.
Anyone else? Close the public hearing. Any questions?
Can I just ask to make sure that we're clear on what's being asked? Is everybody clear as far as, because there's discussion of what the setback was, what the existing is, what the proposed is? Just to make sure everybody is clear on that.
Yeah, so the staff report was written based on an analysis on proposed setback to property line, not to existing condition of building.
Right.
So based on the location of the property line, they're requesting a variance that would allow for, well, they have a 1-foot rear setback proposed, then would allow a 1-foot setback to the first floor on the front of the building. It would be a 0-foot setback to the front property line on the second floor to accommodate a balcony.
Is that two different issues, or is it all wrapped up in one that we're voting on?
All one.
Oh, it is.
So, because the way that it's written is that you have to have a minimum on one side and the other. For instance, if they were to comply with the way the code is written, in order to have a 1-foot rear setback, they would be required to have a 3-foot front setback, or vice versa. You could have a 1-foot
On both
front,
levels.
1-foot front setback and a 3-foot rear setback instead. Pardon?
On both levels.
Yes. So there is not separate, the HD zone does not have separate setback requirements for first and second floors. It applies to all floors of the building.
Can we address them differently, though?
I would say that if the will of the commission were to grant a variance, it would just be, you would need to be specific about what the variance was for. So if you wanted to, for instance, approve the project as proposed, it would be with a first floor setback of 1 foot and a second floor setback of 0 feet. I would be specific about it if that was a motion that you wanted to make.
And with the proposed being 1-foot rear setback, there is no variance being requested for the rear. If that's, then we're just talking about a front yard setback, correct?
Yeah, the reason I highlighted both is because they're tied together.
Right.
But yes, so technically the front yard or rear yard would comply if the first floor was, or the front was 3 feet.
Right.
But technically both are not in compliance the way it's written.
But assuming it's set at 1-foot rear yard, then really we're just talking about the front yard setback. I'm just trying for
Yes.
clarification on the motion.
Thank you. It's very uniquely written. But yeah, what I would say, just if this helps at all with the discussion, the commission essentially has a few different choices you could make this evening. One would be to accept staff's recommendation and deny the project. Staff could, or the commission could continue the item with feedback to the applicant if you wanted to have them come back with a modified project. Or you could choose to approve the project, and if you were to do that, I would ask that you be very specific about the findings that you would want to make for the variance in order to grant the requested setback variance. And then I would come back at the April meeting with a revised resolution for you that would include all of the findings that you wanted to provide. I would rather bring it back to you to approve in April in that case as a revised reso rather than take it upon myself to interpret what you said and try to write something up, because I think it's important for you to have the final approval on the language.
Can I ask a question? So in theory, if they wanted on the first floor to do exactly what we wanted, and the second floor, if they wanted to go 3 feet out and just cut it back, what's the difference? The first floor is still the first floor. It blocks If you're talking about the variance per floor, that's what I'm asking. It makes kind of no sense to me for the second floor. The first floor is what,
So setbacks apply to the entirety of the envelope of the building. So it's not they don't just apply to the first floor of a building.
do you see what I'm saying though? Like, so on the first floor, they go back 3 feet. If they want to do a balcony over, it doesn't affect people walking.
Still applies.
No, but just
They would still
general.
They would still need a variance for that because a balcony is not something that is permitted to encroach into a setback area in the municipal code.
That is what you see on that street, though.
Yeah, so that's what you said. That's why I'm asking, because I see balconies that hang over, and now that I know that everybody's hanging over 2 feet already, so it's just,
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give my spiel.
Let's hear it.
Hopefully won't. Anyway, if I see blank looks, I'll stop. But when I went out there and found that what they're proposing is actually 3 feet back,
Yeah.
except maybe the balcony, and it matches the house closest to Vaughn's.
yeah.
In the setback. And I'd say 80% of the houses are where it is currently located. And there's a couple of new ones in about the middle of the block that look like they're about 3 feet back. So it looks like they might have a 0-foot setback. Who knows?
Okay.
But, so anyway, oh, go ahead.
I did the same thing. I drove down the street and just kind of looked at it, and I'm like,
That's what I did
Yeah.
too. I kept going back.
So when I was looking at that, and then I'm thinking, it kind of makes sense what they're proposing, because the balcony hangs a little bit over just like everybody else does, but they're actually,
the balcony kind of hangs to what the old
For-
property line used to be, what the
it's
old,
even a foot,
It's even foot back.
it's even a
but you know what I'm saying, but what,
but right, it's that same kind of.
where the old
pattern.
houses that haven't been remodeled yet were sitting at the line, right?
Yeah, and then I noticed, that it's with the building close to Vaughn's.
Yeah. And those are
If they
fairly
went
new.
back further, it would be a little jog in.
Yeah.
And then so with that in mind, I was looking at the criteria in terms of making findings. And it looks like the first and second criteria in making findings for a variance, it talks about you can get a variance, but you have to consider the size, shape, and the size and shape of the property, which all those properties are pretty tight. And the strict application of the zoning ordinance, which would deprive the property owner of the privileges enjoyed by other property. So when I read that in this context, I'm thinking all the other properties are actually encroached even more on the block.
Yeah.
And that
They're taking more than they're supposed to have.
seems a little unfair to say that this one wouldn't be allowed, even though it seems like they're improving the situation, they are moving further back, that they couldn't at least match what a couple of the newer homes have done. And what the neighborhood and what the street feel is, that if they were required to go back even further, that wouldn't be fair, compared to those. So I was thinking that would be one case, and that in criteria number 2 is it can't constitute a special privilege. It wouldn't be special, they're even further back. So I would say those are the 2 findings that I would make that would support their proposal.
They're giving up.
But obviously staff,
They're giving up
staff's
2 feet,
thinking,
they're 3 feet, they're giving up 3 feet of their house.
right.
They're gaining it in the back, though.
No, but
But anyway, so that's why I'm leaning towards supporting it.
But
But I also understand staff's issue that, that's not what the ordinance doesn't say that, but that's why the ordinance allows variances, and if we can make findings that rationalize it, that we can grant it.
Anybody else want to make a motion or discussion?
I just want to make sure we're not going to approve or deny based on fairness. Like, at what point is there a precedence for the actual code and what it says and what it holds? Even though everybody else is over, under, I don't think that that's what we should be basing it on, but that's just my personal thing. I'm not being biased to anybody. I'm just seeing it like if staff recommended denial, we should understand completely why, I guess. That's just what I had to say.
And I can.
Can you give the
again,
history of that, like we talked about today, please?
Yeah, so just to address Commissioner Romero's question first is, it's not something staff would recommend, honestly, to make a finding of a variance based on non-legal footprint of existing setbacks. Because if they do encroach into the public right-of-way, other properties along the street, that's not a legal condition. I can't verify that. I don't want to say that that's for sure the case, because I would want to talk to Public Works about it, but you would be basing a variance on something that might not even be a legal condition of the site. But to give a little more background on sort of the applicant's, situation where they had a form that, potentially suggested that they could have a 0-foot front or rear setback. As part of the writing of the staff report, I did spend some time looking at the history of how this section of the code came to be. And this was originally having a designated area for these smaller substandard size lots in the HD zone, was originally established in 1997 by council. And as part of that, there was, in the first version of the code section, the ability to have a 0-foot setback on two sides of the lot. So you could pick like a front and a rear or something of that nature. However, in 1999, the code was amended to reflect the current setback requirements, which was be 3 foot on one side and 1 foot on the other. And that setback standard was maintained and refined in 2008, which was the last time this section of the code was updated. So, just to acknowledge that, at one time, there was something in the code that said that there was an ability to have a 0-foot setback. However, the current version of the code, which has been in existence since 1999 and refined in 2008, only gives the ability to have a 0-foot setback in a side yard. And that's only if you get permission from the adjacent property owner to agree to that condition. So again, staff's analysis and recommendations are based on the location of the legal property lines as reflected by the applicant on their plans. And findings are made based on the amount of variance that is requested based on the location of the building in relation to those property lines, not to the relation of existing development along the street, legal or not. Because again, I don't want to speak to that either, because I didn't do detailed research on whether other buildings on the side of the street had permits for the encroachment into the right-of-way, if it exists, because I don't want to speak to that.
This whole time, and now we're going based off of misinformed information.
Yes.
But there's an actual code.
It's not been followed.
So if it were me, I'd make a motion to deny and follow staff's. That would be my motion, but it doesn't, I don't know about anybody else. I've said my part. I'm just gonna go with what's in the book.
You can make a motion if you want to. Anybody can make a motion.
If I make one, and then we'll see if it has legs.
Well, I would make a motion to move to adopt resolution number PC 25 through 06 and the findings 1 through 4 as listed in the staff report to deny the requested variance and site plan application at 304 Sumner Avenue. That's me.
How about asking for a revision instead of denial?
That's something, but that's just mine. You can ask for that, and then someone can second.
So, do we have to vote?
Because
Somebody has to
do you have
say
a
it.
second for your motion? So if there's no second, then that motion dies, and the commission can consider additional discussion or an additional motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the request for variance. So the 1 foot in the back, and then, so it's really only a variance for the front. And that the side plan also be approved, and the other standard conditions required by the city. with the logic being what I mentioned earlier, that because of the size of the lot, the shape of the lot, which is common, but special citywide, that this lot to have a fair application of privileges, I guess is the term they use, that it wouldn't be granting special privileges for them to be able to build basically smaller than all their neighbors that are either built, over history and may or may not be set back properly. But when you look at it, it seems pretty clear that there is a standard setback in reality on the street, and that forcing this code at this time would almost be treating it different, or as a special unit by making it conform. I mean, to me, that's kind of the weirdness of this is, as a practical matter, we'd be dealing with this property like we never had before, treating it special is in a way to push it back, even though that is the literal reading of the ordinance. So in that case, I'm thinking, well, that's what variances are for, and this is the proper relief valve for that. It's kind of convoluted, but I'm hoping that.
Do you need anything else before I ask for a second?
I'll also have the recording. So thank you for explaining. Thank you for explaining the justification.
Okay, the zoning ordinances of properties. And I'm thinking size and shape of the property that is enjoyed by others. I guess those are two different ones. And that it isn't granting special privilege, it's actually providing what's enjoyed by other neighbors. So that's the findings of my motion, but the motion is to grant the variance.
Can I ask a question before? Was this brought up to the neighbors of the neighboring properties, and they had an opportunity to come up here and argue against or for it?
So
Were they aware of everything?
The project was noticed pursuant
Okay,
to
I'm
our
just curious,
standard
'cause
requirements.
I know one of the neighbors, and so.
And I will say staff had not received any comments
I'm curious,
prior
if
to
they
the
had
public
any
hearing.
arguments or, pros or cons either way.
Discourse over it.
No, staff did not receive any comments prior to the hearing tonight.
Call for a vote?
Okay, go ahead, Toucher. Okay, Marco, we're missing someone. Sean. We have 4 ayes and 1 no, Marco. The motion passes.
So what I will do is I will prepare a revised resolution and bring it back to you for final approval at the April meeting that encompasses all of the findings that were made as part of the motion.
Is there any other business?
I just want to let the commission know that in the April meeting, we'll be bringing back to you short-term rental regulations for discussion. So just putting that on your radar, heads up.
And I
Probably
don't
won't
want,
be more than one meeting. So you'll be able to catch up.
and if you have not turned in your Form 700, please
I
do
think
so
I-
before April
I did.
1st.
I think I did. Is there a way you could confirm?
I'd like to know too.
There's only one person who hasn't turned it in.
Okay, that's good confirmation, thank you.